How many people, let me see a show of hands. By the way, my name is Mark Halverson from WWIB and WOGO Radio. Thrilled to have you here this evening. And on behalf of WIB and WOGO, we're delighted that you've taken some time out here early in June to join us at the beautiful the Florian Gardens here. Let me see a show of hands. How many of you have seen Karen Hurd for a personal consultation? Let me see a show of hands. So a fair number of you. But a number of others of you might be interested to win that free consultation that we're going to have a drawing for. All right, so that is going to be outside here during the first intermission a bit later, so you can look to sign up for that at the center table, and we'll have a drawing for that before the evening concludes. How many of you, let me take a step back. I'd heard about Karen going back a few years. I know that I believe Rod Larson from WIB WOGO had given me some indication that Karen had written a book. And I'd known a little bit. I mean, she was the BeanQueen, and I'm like, come on. But then it was just like this growing tide of people talking, friends from church who've already been on the show this year, but last year particularly talking about, wow, I've seen her. She's just hugely impacted my life. You need to see her. And it was just this growing groundswell, and people from different areas of health concern who said, this lady's amazing. And so lo and behold, I invited Karen on early in January, and we did a half hour, and then the following week we did an hour. And then, all right, well, we'll have her back next month, and we'll have her back in February. And all of a sudden there's a growing cry for more than once a month. And so we now have Wellness Wednesdays with Karen Hurd, the second and fourth Wednesday of the month. And she's going to take a little break in the summer, but we've got plenty of material built up through the programs that we've done already this year. Just the specifics about the amazing lady that you're going to hear the next 3 hours. She graduated summa cum laude from Truman State University. She entered the Army and served 4 years in the Military Intelligence Corps. Earned her diploma in comprehensive nutrition from the American Academy of Nutrition. And it's interesting in closing that she really, as she told us on the radio last week in telling the story about her daughter that got her involved in nutrition, she never had an intention to go this particular direction, but I know we're so glad that she did. Please join me now in giving a rousing welcome for the BeanQueen, Karen Hurd.
Thank you. Well, I feel like Maria on The Sound of Music. Where should I begin? I think we should start at the very beginning. Why we feel like the devil. You know, I have to give you an illustration, and why I came up with the title for this seminar, If You Eat Like the Devil, You'll Feel Like the Devil, is that we have two pastors at our church. One is my husband, another one is the youth pastor, and I remember a Sunday morning that he got up and he says, now congregation, pray for me because I feel awful this morning and I don't think I'm going to get through this. And I remember thinking, it's because I know what you had for breakfast this morning. It was a Coke and a Pop-Tart. And that's why you feel awful. And then we ask God to, you know, somehow erase that. So I wanted to give you some insights today in how you can feel better. So we're going to start at the very beginning. The central nervous system. The central nervous system, I want you to understand, is a bioelectrical system. We send tiny little voltages along the wires in our body. The wires are neural fibers. And these voltages arrive in our brain, and our brain deciphers them, and then our brain will send a message back to, like, your hand to say wave or whatever you're going to do. Now, what's interesting in the central nervous system that no wire is connected to any other wire. They're all separate. Here's a wire, and they get close to each other, but they never touch. And so those of you out there that are electricians know you have to somehow close the circuit. We have to put something in here in this space so that we can get the electrical message that's traveling along the one wire neural fiber to get to this neural fiber and take the message to your hand to say, hello, wave. Well, we can't stretch them together and touch the points together. That's the way we could have electrical conduction. They are apart. So how do we get the electricity to go from this wire to this wire? You have to jump across space. Now, if you were in a vacuum, that means there's nothing there, no air, then we cannot conduct electricity. But we have to conduct electricity, not in a vacuum, but by something that will go across. So, what could we put inside to get across this space? We could put a piece of potato there, because a potato is a conductor, is an electrical conductor. And so then we could get the message from here to there. Or we could take the end of this wire and put it in the puddle of water, and in the same puddle of water, put the end of the wire in this same puddle, and then water will conduct the electricity. That's why you're never supposed to dry your hair when you're taking a bath. Okay, because the electricity from the hair dryer plugged into the wall, if it goes through the water, zzz. Okay, so we have to get this electrical conduction to happen. And what closes the circuit, or what fills this gap, and by the way, the gap has a name, it's called the neural synapse, or the synaptical gap. To get this electricity across, we have to put in something called neurotransmitters. Now, neurotransmitters are very important hormones, and I want you to remember this. They're hormones, because we're going to dwell on this a lot tonight. And these neurotransmitters can carry messages at different rates. Some neurotransmitters work better than others. We make over 30 of them in the human body. And you're familiar with some of them. I'll name off a few. Acetylcholine, maybe you've heard of dopamine. Those who have Parkinson's disease, you'll know about dopamine. We have serotonin. You've all heard about serotonin, the happy hormone. You know, that's the Prozac. Prozac is a serotonin uptake inhibitor. And then there's epinephrine and norepinephrine. And epinephrine and norepinephrine are the king and the queen of neurotransmitters. And what I mean by that is some neurotransmitters are able to conduct electricity better than other neurotransmitters. Let's take an everyday example. The wiring in this building will be copper. Now, copper is a good conductor. This computer is running off of copper wiring. The lights are running off of copper wiring. If we wired this building in, say, gold, which would be very expensive and we wouldn't do that, but if it was wired in gold, we would get more electricity coming across the wire, because gold is a better conductor than copper. And there are even better conductors than gold: silver. And then we also have the king and queen of conductors, which are liquid mercury and platinum. Those are what we call our superconductors. They let so much electricity go across that wire that a lot happens. Now, when we have neurotransmitters, there's a certain amount of resistance in every neurotransmitter. That's what happens in these metals that I've been bringing up to you, the copper and the silver. There's a resistance. Remember those guys that have studied physics and electricity? It's measured in ohms, all right? And the more resistance you have, the less electricity is going to come across. It is the same way with neurotransmitters. Serotonin is comparable to copper. It's a great neurotransmitter. You're going to light up. Your brain is going to think. You can drive a car. You can do all the functions that we do. But there are more powerful neurotransmitters. And the king is norepinephrine, and the queen is epinephrine. We're looking at platinum and liquid mercury. When you put these two neurotransmitters in a synaptical gap, the electricity coming from this neural fiber into this neural fiber, there's more. You get more signals. You see more. You hear more. Now, there are some of you out here that are going to relate to this. If you have a high production of norepinephrine or epinephrine, you will walk into a room with someone else that has a lower production of these two neurotransmitters and go, something's burning in here. And the person you're with is going to go, no, I don't smell anything. It's in your head. And you'll know, no, it's an electrical smell. You know, there's a wire in the wall. I know it, and the house is going to burn down tonight. You know, this is the wife, and the husband's going, oh, nah, you know. Now, is she making it up? No, she really smells something. Well, why can't the other person smell it? Because the neurotransmitter that's going to be in this synaptical gap of the other person will most likely be primarily serotonin. So the message is not all messages are getting through. It's just like not all the time will all electricity get through because of the resistance depending on the conductor. If you have epinephrine or norepinephrine as the primary neurotransmitters in your synaptical gaps, you are going to think very fast. You will be, let's give you some examples. You will be Once Upon a Mattress. You guys have probably seen this musical or this play before. Remember the Princess and the Pea? And the true royal princess can sleep on a whole stack of mattresses, and she will turn and toss all night long because she's uncomfortable because there's a little tiny pea at the bottom of the stack. Some of you out there are that way. You feel that. You're walking down a path, and all of a sudden you stop. It's like, oh, I got a rock in my shoe, and you take off your shoe, and you pour it out, and it's like, oh, it's a piece of sand. Drive you crazy. You will notice all those things. I have to tell you a story about a man in our church named Gordon. He's an entomologist. That means he's an insect person. And he keeps bees. And he was telling me the story a few years ago that he pulled on his boots. It's wintertime, going out to check the beehives. And he pulled on his boots, and it's just like all of us up here in Wisconsin. We have boots that, you have socked feet, usually double socks in the winter, and you just pull on the boot. By the way, in Missouri, they don't do that. They wear galoshes over the top of their shoes. Can you believe that? Yes, I came from Missouri. It's like so different up here. So he's pulling on his boots, and he said he felt some little lump at the bottom of his boot. You know how he just ignored it and went on. So he goes outside. This is morning. He comes in by noon for lunch, and he takes his boots off, and out rolls a mouse. By the way, a dead mouse by now. And I said, Gordon, you have to be an O blood type. He said, how do you know? I said, because O blood types are primarily serotonin producers, and you are not a high epinephrine or a norepinephrine producer, because if I stuck my foot in there and there was a little fluff of a spider, boom, my foot would be out of there. I'd feel it. So I'm an A blood type. You'll notice all A blood types are high epinephrine and norepinephrine producers. And you can be, this is just a general principle. You certainly can be an O blood type and be a high epinephrine, norepinephrine producer, depending on your diet, which we're going to get to. But there are certain people that, I already covered that slide. Okay, yeah. There are certain people that are born high producers. Now, I want to tell you that neurotransmitters are made in two different places. The first place that they are made is in the central nervous system. At the end of these neural fibers, there are little cells at the end of the dendrite. A dendrite's just a fancy word for tree-like. It's the way the nerves spread out. If you ever think about people who say, my nerves are fried, and you think about this splayed out picture of little fibers, they actually look like that. And so that's the dendrite. On the other side, there's an axon. It's a brush-like looking thing, and this is how they send and receive messages. Well, at the end of the dendrite and at the end of the axon, there's cells that produce all these 30-plus neurotransmitters. And so we always think neurotransmitters are made only in the central nervous system. That's not true. Actually, the most powerful ones, king and queen, epinephrine and norepinephrine, are made in the endocrine system. Now, the endocrine system we're going to talk a lot about tonight is a system that's composed of glands that produce hormones. And if we make a lot of the king and queen neurotransmitter, it's going to have a direct effect on your neural conduction. Now, let's talk about race cars and Volkswagen bugs. I sort of jumped to that. My slides. I got to stay on task. Okay. Some of you are born as race cars. You are the ones that when you get a new piece of clothing, the tag in the back of your shirt is driving you nuts. First thing you do is you get out the seam ripper. Well, ladies might do that. Men, they just go rip. And then there's this hole at the back. It's like, oh, and then your wife has to sew that up. Or you are the person that walks into a room and the picture is just slightly on the wall. It's just slightly tipped. And you got to go over there and straighten it up because otherwise it's going to drive you insane all night long. Or you're the person, I'm the person, when I go to someone else's home, like for a Bible study, and we're in the living room setting, and there's the couch, and there's the other chairs, and then there's the lazy boy rocker, or the whatever rocker. I always head for the rocker, because somebody else will sit in that rocker, and will be doing this, all night while I have to listen to the Bible study. And I will see in the peripheral of my vision, and it's really rude to listen to the Bible study like this, because peripheral motion will drive you insane. Why? Because you have such large amounts of epinephrine and norepinephrine. You're sending so many signals across the synaptical gap, it'll drive you insane. My associate, Sarah Morgan, who is out here, I don't know, she might be sitting out here right now. She works with me. She's a nutritionist that I have trained, and she just came back from a cruise, the last cruise she'll ever go on, I think, because she was so seasick. She is still like this, and it's been since she was back on Sunday night, because she has a high epinephrine, norepinephrine production. Those people I call race cars. They are at a stop sign idling faster than the Volkswagen Bugs when they're at full throttle. Now, race cars get into trouble, though, because they think that they can eat like everybody else, and if they do, they're going to be in big trouble because they careen out of control. They get going faster and faster and faster and faster, and then they hit the wall like an Indy 500 and crash, and sometimes they blow up. Now, Volkswagen Bugs, we got to talk about those guys, too. I'm not talking about these slug-a-bugs. My kids, when we were driving down the road, they got this thing, they jam their fists in them and say, slug-a-bug. Do your kids do that, too? Anyway, I guess it's something the kids do. I'm not talking about those Volkswagen Bugs. I'm talking about the 60s Herbie's variety. You guys remember Herbie? This is a little put, and goes along nicely and certainly does a good job. These people who are Volkswagen Bugs are the majority of the people in our population. And they are steady, and they can do a lot of things. They can eat sugar and get away with it. They can do caffeine and get away with it. They can have wine and get away with it. But if you are a race car, you're not going to get away with anything. That's why when people come and say to me, well, why does my co-worker eat this way and she doesn't have those problems? I said, she's probably a Volkswagen Bug. And so you have to realize how God made you, and then you'll have to eat accordingly to how God made you. Now, Volkswagen Bugs, because most of you out there are going to be Volkswagen Bugs. Don't feel inferior. If we didn't have you, the race cars would absolutely, the whole world would blow up. Because it would be out of control. We have to have the Volkswagen Bugs to keep everything steady and under control. And they are very needed. Now, let's talk about stomping on the gas pedal. I think you understand how neuroconduction, and I'll make sure that we've got this, that the more messages you send across the synaptical gap, the faster you think. Wherever Mark Halverson is in the room, I don't see him, there he is. You, sir, are a race car. Just want you to know that, in case you hadn't identified that. And my husband, wherever he is in the room, yes, he's a Volkswagen Bug. All right, and have you figured out what I am? Okay. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to get that one. Okay. More messages we send across the synaptical gap, the faster we move, the faster we talk. And so raise your hand if you think I'm talking, not right now, okay, don't embarrass me. But if I get talking too fast, just sort of wave and I'll go, oh, I'm talking too fast, slow down. Now, we stomp on the gas pedal. If you stomp on the gas pedal, you'll go faster. Volkswagen Bugs, when they stomp on the gas pedal, they get to feel like a race car when they're just at the stop sign. They're thinking faster. They feel better. They are having more thoughts. They're smarter. They're sharper because they're going faster. They have more neural conduction that's happening. And so they are very, very tempted to use stimulants to get them to that place. What are stimulants? Because you guys are thinking drugs. No, well, I could say that sugar is a drug. Yeah, sugar is a stimulant, and it is, yeah, it's a drug. I almost had that slide up there on this before we started, how we were running the slideshow, but I thought that might be too offensive if I wrote that up there, sugar is a drug, but I'll say it now, okay? Sugar is a stimulant, and there's caffeine, and there's artificial sweeteners. I'm going to run these up on a slide in a little while when I tell you how to stop this tomfoolery. But if you stomp on the gas pedal, then you go faster. And it's okay for a lot of the Volkswagen Bugs. They can get away with it for a time, but eventually they will pay. For the race cars, you're never going to get away with it, not 1 inch. Because when you stomp on the gas pedal, you're already going so fast that you're going to have trouble. And you're going to end up with anxiety and depression. And O's can end up with that too, or the Volkswagens can end up with that too after they push themselves for so long. But A's, you have no margin. All right, well, I'm calling you A's. I should call you the race cars. Race cars, you have no margin because you can be a different blood type and be a race car. Okay, now we also have something else. We often tend to operate without a governor. Do you guys know what a governor is? Yes. A governor is a mechanism that you put on an engine to regulate it. So it doesn't matter how much you push on the gas pedal, how fast you want to go, you will only go so fast. I heard recently they're thinking about doing legislation in Wisconsin to put a governor on snowmobiles. I don't know if that's true, so anybody get upset, okay, if you're a snowmobile driver. But anyway, it's to just keep you going a certain speed, and you cannot go any faster. So when we operate without a governor, that means all holds are removed. So now we can go as fast and faster, 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 and faster. It's a very scary feeling if you go faster and faster. If anybody of you ever experienced mania, that's being a manic is another word for it, or an anxiety attack or a panic attack, this is when you're operating without a governor. And you're going so fast, there is so much neural conduction, the message going fast, 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 that it's too much. The lights are too bright. The noise is too much. There's too many people. There's too many cars on the road, and the lights are coming right at me. It's night. I'm going stark raving mad. I think I'm going to just jump out of my skin and go through the ceiling. That's anxiety. You have too many messages crossing the synaptical gap. You are operating without a governor. In addition to that, you've stepped on your gas pedal. And so that can stop, and I will tell you how we're going to do that in a little bit. Now, when we operate without a governor, there's a way to put the governor in, which I'm going to keep you in suspense and tell you later. But I want to tell you about another little situation. The governors are put on a system called the adrenal system. The adrenal system is part of this larger system that I mentioned before called the endocrine system. The adrenal glands sit on top of your kidneys. I point to my back, but you could point to the front. They're right here, but they're in the middle of you, sitting right on top of the kidneys. They're called the adrenals because adrenal, renal means kidney, ad means on top of, so on top of the kidneys. Small little glands that sit like little caps on those kidneys. Now, the adrenal glands make for you some interesting hormones. They make for you, most especially, more than anything else, a hormone that we call adrenaline. Now, let me tell you what adrenaline is. Adrenaline is a nice word, but adrenaline is made out of two hormones. Name of hormones: epinephrine and norepinephrine. You should recognize those names. They're the king and queen of neurotransmitters. So if you are making large amounts of epinephrine and norepinephrine from your adrenal glands, they flood every synaptical gap with their powerful ability to conduct electricity. Now, epinephrine and norepinephrine made in the adrenal glands is your primary source of those two neurotransmitters. When you go to a physician and they say you have depression or anxiety, and you'll say, what causes it? And they'll say it's an imbalance in neurotransmitters. It is. That is correct. And they don't have a lot of time. Physicians don't have a lot of time to explain things to you, but I will explain a little bit more to you, because to give you that explanation is like saying to the child who says, Mommy, where do babies come from? And you say, from mommy's tummy. Well, it's true. Babies come from mommy's tummy. But it's a whole lot more complicated than that. Now, neurotransmitters, an imbalance of neurotransmitters, brain chemicals. Neurotransmitters are brain chemicals. We think it only happens in the brain. The vast majority is happening in the adrenal glands. Because when you produce a lot of adrenaline, you will notice that you think faster. In fact, the whole world, you can discern more. The colors are brighter. The wind, you can feel just the slightest little thing. You hear the creak on the stairs that nobody else heard. Everything is more clear. And that comes because of this increased neurotransmitter activity. I just got to give you one illustration here. You guys will think I'm nuts, but this is true. It happened about 2 years ago, and I'm at this intersection in Eau Claire. It's right where that Kentucky Fried is, Walgreens. You know, it's like 5 streets coming together that I don't like. It's a Brackett Avenue and 53. And so I am at a stoplight. This is winter. My windows are rolled up in the van. And a car ahead of me, their windows are rolled up. And I mean, I just pull up, the stoplight is red, and I stop, and I smell cigarette smoke. And I go, the lady in front of me, and I didn't even see her. I mean, the lady in front of me in the car has to be smoking. And you got to look politely to see, yep, she's smoking. Now, come on, how can that be? Karen Hurd smells smoke, and your windows are rolled up, her windows are rolled up, and it's wintertime, and you're only at a light for a few seconds. That's the power of epinephrine and norepinephrine. That's the power of adrenaline. It allows you, all the molecules are there. They're in the air, and we always think, yes, they're there. But it only takes one molecule to trigger and to send a message to your brain so that you can discern something. Now, the vast majority of these two neurotransmitters, the king and queen, are made in your adrenal glands. And what we eat has everything to do with the health of your adrenal glands. When you eat sugar, when you take in caffeine, when you do artificial sweeteners, that is like taking a whip to the adrenals and saying, you're not producing enough, giddy up, go, go, go. You know that. Why do you drink a cup of coffee in the morning? Every one of you will say, well, it gets me going. I can't even get dressed hardly until I have my cup of coffee. What's in coffee? Caffeine. Because if you have a cup of water, you're not going to get a rush like that. So the caffeine is like taking a whip and hitting the adrenals and saying, go, you horses. And I'll call them horses because we have two adrenals. And produce adrenaline for me. So you get this shot of adrenaline. It's a neurotransmitter. All of a sudden you're thinking, you're moving, you're ready to go. Let's go, people. We're moving right out. Yes, that's what adrenaline does for you. Now, the adrenal glands in every person, whether you are a race car or whether you're a Volkswagen Bug, are the same. And if you demand more and more and more out of your adrenal glands, there comes a time the adrenals say, that's it. I can't do this anymore. I'm supposed to make this much adrenaline every day. We make maintenance amounts of adrenaline. I should stop and tell you, adrenaline is called the fight and flight hormone. And remember, it's epinephrine and norepinephrine. Those are the two hormones that make it up. But it's what I call the zippity-doo-dah hormone. It's what allows you to put one foot in front of the other. It is what gives you a sense of well-being. Because a lot of you may have suffered or still do from depression, and you don't have anything to be depressed about. You know, you can pay your bills, you have a roof over your head, the kids are not in trouble, you have a job, but it's just a chore to be alive, just a chore to get out of bed. You don't have enough adrenaline because remember, it's the neurotransmitters that are sending messages back and forth. It is the neurotransmitter. And so you don't get the messages. And if you don't get a message that it's a beautiful sunny day or that there's a storm blowing in over Eau Claire and it's marvelous to watch God's handiwork in that, you don't get those messages. It's like, blah. It's because you don't have enough adrenaline. Why not? You're running out of gas. Why? You're beating the tar out of your glands. They're supposed to make this maintenance amount of adrenaline every day so that you can put one foot in front of the other. If you don't have adrenaline, you cannot even wake up. If you don't have adrenaline, you cannot even think. Adrenaline is essential. If you didn't have your adrenal glands, you'd be dead in a second. You absolutely have to have your adrenal glands. So if you say, this is what we're supposed to make on a maintenance level, and you say, that's not adequate, I need more, and you produce up here every day because you're using the caffeine or the sugar or the artificial sweeteners, and I'm going to get into perfumes later too, and all these other things to stimulate the production of adrenaline, there comes a time when the glands say, do I always have to produce at this level? Do I ever get a break? Do you ever let me just go down to normal maintenance? No, because we have so much to do. We have to be here, we have to be there, we have to do this, we have to do. So when we whip them, and there comes a time the glands say, enough. I will not be able to do this any longer. And at that time, and it can happen in one day, by the way, this frequently happens in a day, that one day you're fine and the next morning you can't even pull your carcass out of bed. And that's because the adrenals have just said, I can't do it. And so then you say, the only thing that possibly could get me going is, I need a Snickers bar and a Mountain Dew. And so you take out not just a little riding crop, like, come on, giddy up now, adrenals. Let's get out the bullwhip, people. Come on. We're going to whip those adrenals into production. And it works. But if you had two horses that were pulling a heavy wagon, by the way, the heavy wagon is you. And these horses have been working for a long time for you, many years, and they have been pulling the load. You never feed them right. You don't really rest them properly. And whenever they don't go fast enough, you beat them. What will happen when you continue just to flog them and flog them and flog them? They're going to get to a point where they say, I can't do this. And they can be almost dead. I have a lot of Amish clients, and so I talk to them about this horse illustration a lot, because they say, oh yeah, you can take basically a half-dead horse, and you can hit him with a whip, and he'll charge forward. Yeah, he will. That, by the way, is what I call the coughing and sputtering of the engine. They charge forward, boom, and then they go, puck, 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 puck. The horses slow down, and then you have to hit them again to make them run. This is where we are. Most of us operate here at the coughing and the sputtering of the engine. We've run out of gas. You have so exhausted the adrenal glands they can't produce the adrenaline for you, so you have to beat them to go, and if you're not beating them, they don't go, so you're surging forward, falling back. You think about these old jalopies, or the Volkswagen Herbie's not quite a good illustration here, but they go put forward, backfire, put forward, backfire. And that's the way we are, and we wonder, why am I okay at work? Here I am, I get my coffee, I get my donut, and I get to work, and I can go, I can do everything. But when you hit the door, your door, when you get home, it may not even be the door of your home, it might be the door of your car in the parking lot where you work. And it's like, there's nothing left. You go home, you don't have enough strength to make dinner for your family. It's like, okay, guys, we're having McDonald's again tonight. You sit on the couch all night, you drag yourself to bed, and you get up in the morning, and you do the same thing all over again. You go to work, you're there, because you got to have adrenaline, you got to go. And then you go home and you crash. That's not a way to live. That's not a way to live. You should feel like $1 million. You should feel like that every moment. I mean, you should go to bed. I do get tired, too, and I do go to bed at night, too. Believe it or not. But you should feel like $1 million all day, that you could spread your wings like an eagle and soar on the currents of the wind just effortlessly. That's the way we should feel. If you are making steady, strong amounts of adrenaline, steady on, steady on, steady on all the time, that is the way you will feel. I want each one of you to feel that way. And there's not one of you sitting out there that cannot feel that way. Every last one of you can. But we got to get past this coughing and sputtering of the engine. Now, we have this little problem. We get caught in a little vicious circle because you become dependent upon your caffeine, dependent upon your sugar, dependent on cigarettes, which I hadn't touched on, dependent upon your perfumes. You really are dependent upon perfumes, dependent upon all these little stimulants to get you going. And when you take them away, what if you took the whip away from the horses that are exhausted, tired, and half dead? Do you think they're going to charge out there for you? No. They're going to stand stock still and say, whoosh, good. Glad she's not beating the tar out of me anymore. And people don't want to feel like that. It's like, I got to go to work. I have to teach a class today. I have to do whatever it is you're doing today. And so we're not willing to go through that process of withdrawal. And withdrawal is not a happy time. If any of you have gone through caffeine withdrawal, it involves headaches, migraine type, irritability, general grouchiness, muscle aches and pains. Just lock yourself in a closet and tell everybody to stay away for 2 weeks because you won't be happy. We don't want to be around you when you're in caffeine withdrawal. Because you took the whips away. Now the horses, they will recover. Adrenal glands are recoverable. The cell life on an adrenal gland is only 3 months. And that's why people are impatient too. Because when they come see me, they get all this information and they say, good, and they want to be better tomorrow. It's like, oh no. It took you 30 or 40 years, 50 years, 60 years to get into this pickle. Give me a little time to get you out. Nutrition is an extremely effective answer to your problems, but it will take time because to rebuild the endocrine system, think about it, if these glands are exhausted and tired, and we remove the whips and say, okay, now we're going to just let the horses rest, we're going to let them recover, I know it takes you 3 months. We want to be ready better in 3 months, and by the way, you will see a definitive improvement in 3 months. What I mean by definitive, it's measurable, that you will have noticed it. Will you be completely well? No, Because the rebuilding of the endocrine system, specifically we're talking about the adrenals right now, is as complicated as an amortization schedule for mortgage. Because we have cells that live 3 months, okay? That means the cells live 90 days. Cells are not replaced on the 90th day and boom, you have a new adrenal system. No, 1/90th of your cells will die today, and 1/90th will die tomorrow. So by the end of 90 days, we have a completely new adrenal system. But imagine this is exactly what happens. You start eating well. We put a governor on your system. That's what eating well is, and I'll tell you what the governor is. Remember, I'm keeping you in suspense? Okay. You put the governor on the system, which is what will rebuild these horses and these adrenal glands. And then you're eating right for one whole day. And so the adrenal gland cells that are born that day will finally be healthy, strong. It's like, let's go. Let's make adrenaline for this person. And the 1/90th cells look around at the other 89/90ths of the gland, and those 89/90ths of the gland stare back with blank, soulless eyes. And they say, come on. The 1/90 says, come on, we got to make adrenaline for this person. They got to get up and go. And they say, kid, you're obviously new. Do whatever you want, but we're just going to sit in a corner here. And so the new 1/90th goes out there and says, I'm going to make adrenaline. I'm going to make adrenaline by the end of the day. It's like, I cannot carry the load of the entire gland by myself. That's a lot of adrenaline for just 1/90th of the gland to make. Okay, but we have another day, and the next day, you're still eating well. Now you made 2 days in a row. Whoosh, eating well. A new 1/90th cells come online. And the new 1/90th says, come on, guys, let's make adrenaline, follow me. 88/90ths of the gland stare back with blank, soulless eyes. And then over in the corner, there's 1/90th gland that's doing a little funny shiver and tremble. And they say, what happened to you? Oh, I tried to carry the weight of the whole gland yesterday. I'm falling to pieces. And so by the time we get to the end of the 3-month period, you have a whole new set of adrenal gland cells, but the ones first online are toast. Burnt toast. You've heard that illustration before. Yeah, they're burned up. They're no good. So at the end of 3 months, you will have noticed a difference, but it's going to take a full 18 to 24 before you have a smooth running system. It's like, you want adrenaline? How much you want? And where do you want it? You got it, baby. And most people are not willing to wait the 18 to 24 months. By the way, I've seen some miraculous things happen. The younger you are, by the way, the faster you heal. But the older you are, the slower it goes. That many more years of abuse on your body. So I have seen things turn around as quickly in a month, which is a rapid turnaround, or the average time, if you are 40 and over, you're looking at 18 to 24. And you said, it's too long. That's too long for me. I'm not going to eat right for 18 to 24 months. Well, what are your choices? To keep living the way you're living? If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you always got. So if you're feeling raunchy and you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep feeling raunchy. In fact, you'll get even more raunchy. Wasn't it Abraham Lincoln that said that the definition of insanity is to continue to do the same thing and expect a different result? Blow me away. Yes. If you want to be different, you got to change something. I was in the Army for 4 years, and I remember in my military intelligence training, I was in Fort Huachuca, Arizona, and we were in a class, we were all second lieutenants, green, young officers. I was about 23 years old. And it was a hot day. Oh, it's hot in Fort Huachuca. And they don't have air conditioning there. They have what's called swamp coolers. Anybody from the South, you'll remember swamp coolers, yes. And it doesn't really make things cool, as you know. It just sort of takes some humidity out of the air. And so I remember sitting there, and there was a major that got up to teach us a class on final protective fires. Final protective fires are, I won't go into a lot of detail because you guys don't want to know military tactics, but your back is against the wall and your position is being overrun by the enemy, and it's like, okay, let's bring out the big guns. And you lay down a fire of artillery. It's artillery that come in from far away and sort of cover your position so that you can retreat. And so he's telling us how to call in artillery for final protective fires. And I will never forget what he said that day, because he said, lieutenants, if you haven't heard anything else I've said in this class, hear this. You would never have to set up final protective fires if your battle plan was working. And he says, the problem is that when your battle plan is working, the officer in charge, and every last one of you is training to be an officer in charge, and you're going to have troops underneath you that you're responsible for their very lives, you say, oh, the plan isn't working. We just need to do it harder. Come on, guys. Rah, rah. Harder, harder. Push harder, harder. He says, that's not going to get you anywhere. Your plan already failed. Forget the plan. Throw it out the window and come up with a different battle plan and save your squad or your platoon or your company or your battalion or your division. And then he talked about some of the military geniuses. We have some wonderful military geniuses. Robert E. Lee was one of them, General MacArthur. And their military tactics, and it always involved changing your battle plan. And I sat there that day as this young green second lieutenant, and I thought, that's the way we all live our lives. If we are doing a certain plan, I'm going to lose weight this year, or this is the way I'm going to keep house, or whatever you're trying to accomplish, and you come up with a plan, and it doesn't work, you know what we do? We just say, I need to try harder. It's not trying harder. Work smarter. It's a bad plan. Throw it out. Because all you're going to do is have your position overrun. So I made a promise to God that day. I remember the room very clearly. The walls were pale green. You don't want to go into all the details. Okay. And I remember exactly where I was sitting in third row, back on the right. Okay. And I made a promise to God that day, I will not live my life that way. If my battle plan is not working, I am going to throw it away. And I will come up with a different battle plan. And if that battle plan doesn't work, I will throw that one away. And if that one doesn't work, I will throw that one away until I have a battle plan that works. That's what I want you to do today. If your battle plan's not working, don't try harder. You've already been trying. You've already put tons of effort into it. No, it's time to come up with a new plan. So today, I'm going to give you a new plan. All right, coughing and sputtering the engine. I think you understand. I got to watch my watch here. Oh, good, I'm doing fine. Stop this tomfoolery. Quit stomping on the gas pedal and install a governor. How in the world are we going to do that? Here we go. These are the things that stomp on the gas pedal. Sweets. And you're going to say, oh, really? How do sweets stomp on the gas pedal? Well, I want to go back to that whole neurotransmitter thing. Remember I told you there are cells at the end of the dendrite and the axon, at the end of the neural fiber, that produce these neurotransmitters. Guess which fuel which fuel do these neurotransmitters run on? Oh, I got to tell you, there's only two choices. Hey, this is going to be easy for you because you got the chance. Either it's right or it's wrong. It's a 50% chance of getting right. Okay, two fuels in the human body. One, sugar. Sugar is a fuel. Two, fat. Those are the only two fuels in the human body that we can possibly burn. Inside each cell, we have a cell, and inside the cell there are little things called mitochondria. They are little tiny fuel-burning factories where we take either a sugar or a fat and we metabolize it. It's through a very interesting process called the ATP process, for those who are out here who studied the ATP process. Yes. And we metabolize that fat or that sugar into energy. Every single cell in the human body can burn either fat or sugar. And I'm going to say sugar, I'll be specific, it's called glucose. Inside the body, in the bloodstream, it's called glucose. So every cell can either burn glucose, sugar, or we can burn fat, with the exception of one system. And that is the central nervous system. Didn't I start at the very beginning with the central nervous system? Yes. The central nervous system is the only exception. It can only burn one fuel. Everybody else, every other system in the body is a dual burner. Burn fat or sugar. Your cardiovascular system, your skeletal system, the endocrine system, all of those can burn fat just as well as sugar. Not the central nervous system. You have one opportunity to get this question right. Does the central nervous system burn sugar or fat? Excellent. Sugar. The central nervous system burns sugar. So if you dump in a lot of sugar, all of a sudden you're making neurotransmitters. Making lots of neurotransmitters. And I'll tell you in a second how the endocrine system gets involved in this too. Haven't you ever noticed if you're teaching a classroom full of kids at Sunday school, even if it's not a whole classroom, 3 of them, feed them some Kool-Aid and cookies, because isn't that what we always give them? They're going to be bouncing off the walls, and they're training. They're not sitting, twittering around. They're not sitting still. They're going faster and faster and faster and faster. It's like, sit down, kid. That's because you just stepped on their gas pedal by feeding them the Kool-Aid, which is a sugar drink, and then the cookies. That's the one problem with the sweets. There's another problem, which involves the endocrine system. When you eat something that's sweet, it is very rapidly absorbed. I want to give you an example. First of all, you need to know just a little bit about the gastrointestinal tract, although we get to talk a lot about the gastrointestinal tract later. When you take in sugar, the digestion starts in your mouth. When you take in anything, digestion starts in your mouth. Your intestinal tract, by the way, is beginning in your mouth. And so it goes all the way from mouth to the end. Okay, trying to think of nice ways to say things, okay? All right, all the way through you, from top to bottom. Hey, if you ever want to know what the inside of your gastrointestinal tract looks like without seeing pictures of your colonoscopy, look inside your mouth. That's what it looks like. So we put food here, and then the gastrointestinal tract is just divided up by little circular muscles called sphincters that open and close like the aperture on a camera. But when you put food in your mouth, the digestion begins there. 30% of all carbohydrates that you put in your mouth have been digested and absorbed in your mouth before you swallow. If you were eating a piece of bread, let's make it good bread. It's whole grain Ezekiel bread or Pepperidge Farm 9 grain, all these fancy things, and you put that bite of bread in your mouth and you are chewing it. Before you swallow, 30% of the carbohydrates, which are converted to sugars, blood glucose, will be absorbed and in your bloodstream before you swallow. How long do you chew a piece of bread? 2 seconds at most if you're really going slowly. So we have 30% absorption in our mouth. Then we go down the esophagus, and we have a little bit more absorption, very little in the esophagus, and then we move into the stomach. The stomach is over here, by the way, on your left side. Most people think, this is your stomach? No. This is your duodenum. It's the first part of your small intestine. But can you imagine your little girl coming up to you and saying, Mommy, my duodenum hurts? But I say my stomach, but your stomach's way over here. And so the food lands in the stomach. By the time a carbohydrate leaves your stomach, which is 20 minutes, it's in your stomach for 20 minutes, it's totally digested. Because carbohydrates are digested just like this, really quickly. And the more simple the carbohydrate, we have what are called saccharides, a big word, but it just means the way that the sugar molecules are attached together and they turn into monosaccharides and all kinds of stuff. The more simple your sugar, the faster it's absorbed. So I just told you about a piece of healthy bread. 30% is absorbed before you swallow that bite. Let's get into some simpler sugars. What if it was a brownie? You're pressing closer to 70% absorption in the mouth of the sugars. And there's egg and brownie and a few other things, fats too. They're not absorbed through the mouth. And then if you get into your liquid sugars, you are talking about rapid absorption. It's so rapid, 30% will be absorbed in your mouth, but by the time 3 minutes have passed on a liquid sugar, you have 100% absorption of all those carbohydrates in your bloodstream. 3 minutes, 100% absorption, whoosh. And what if it was a warm liquid sugar? Because the hotter it is, the faster it's absorbed. Then we're talking about, you got about a minute and a half and you're on a sugar high, like boom. And what occurs is that your blood sugars are supposed to go up on this nice little bell curve, and not a very high level, just like this, up and down like this. When you have a sugar, you go zing, straight up, you spike. And when you spike, it means you have a lot of sugar in your bloodstream quickly. There is this pituitary gland, which is part of your endocrine system. It resides at the base of your brain, just below the hypothalamus, which is part of your brain. And the pituitary is constantly monitoring your blood sugar because your blood sugar is supposed to be between, the numbers change all the time, but it's supposed to be between 70 and 110, although sometimes now they say 60 and 100, and it doesn't matter, whatever the lab you go to, there's different ranges. But we're supposed to be basically in this tight range. Well, the pituitary is responsible for keeping your blood sugars there because it can regulate your blood sugar with hormones. And if all of a sudden you're doing a spike, the pituitary goes, Houston, we have a problem. This woman's blood sugar is spiking, and you can go up many points per second, even 20 points per second. And the pituitary goes, we got to bring this woman's blood sugar down now. Because if she goes up that quickly, how long do we have before she is in diabetic coma? Now, what's diabetic coma? It's too much gas. Okay, let's go back to flooding engines here. Have any of you flooded an engine on your car? Yeah. Oh, hey, I have a man that even admitted that. Thank you. Women usually do this, okay? Or at least they admit it. What is the problem when you flood the engine on your car? You put too much gas too quickly. And so you flood the engine. And then it can't start. You can actually kill the engine. That's what diabetic coma is. You put too much sugar in the central nervous system, which is your brain, and you flood the engine. And so you can kill the brain. Diabetic coma is fatal unless you were reached in time. So the pituitary says, I got a problem, I got a big problem. This woman's blood sugar is going up so fast that I have, approximately 2 minutes and 20 seconds, because you can go that fast. 2 minutes and 20 seconds and she will be dead. What am I going to do? We have to call out a hormone to reduce the blood sugar. Get rid of the blood sugar, get it out. And so an emergency signal is sent to the pancreas, another gland in the endocrine system, which is right here off of your stomach. And it produces a hormone called insulin. Insulin has the capacity to give up I won't even go into chemistry, but it gives up hydrogen. I just want to tell you because it's fun to talk about chemistry. Anyway, it gives up some of its hydrogen and can convert a CHO molecule, which is a sugar molecule, into a fat. We could take insulin and convert our sugars into a fat. And then if it's a fat, we won't flood the engine. Whoosh, we'll be saved. Okay, so this is what the pituitary does. It says, pancreas, come in, we have a problem. We have got to get a lot of insulin out fast, and not a little bit, because you see how this sugar is going up? It's spiking. I need you to give me as much insulin to bring down her sugar in an equal and opposite response. Newton's laws of motion. Newton's third law of motion, anybody remember it? For every action in nature, there is a equal and opposite reaction. Excellent, you're all well schooled. All right, now, if your blood sugar is spiking at this level, then you're going to release enough insulin to bring it down at this level. So you release a large amount of insulin. It works. Your sugar comes down. And by the way, what happened to all those sugar molecules converted into a fat known as a triglyceride, which will raise your blood cholesterol levels, also cause diabetes, because triglyceride is the reason we have type 2 diabetes. Oh, and besides that, if we have all these extra triglycerides, let's tuck them away someplace. Where should we store them? In your adipose tissue. Adipose tissue is a fancy word for fat cells. You get the thunder thighs. Sorry, maybe that was too personal. Okay. You get a little bigger. The guys get the nice round, belly, and we're storing triglycerides. Triglycerides are what are in a fat cell. They came from your sugars that were converted into a fat because you ate too much sugar. Okay, well, is that the only problem? No, that's not even the half of it. Now your blood sugar is coming down really fast. And the pituitary goes, uh-oh, I got another problem. The sugar's coming down so fast that we're going to run out of fuel for the brain. Remember, the brain, the central nervous system, can only burn sugar for fuel. But now your sugar is disappearing so rapidly from the bloodstream that you're starting to get shaky. You get the low blood sugar symptoms. That's when your vision sort of dims. You can feel a little bit woozy. Those are the more severe symptoms. You can feel shaky inside or just literally shake like this. If you don't have those symptoms, you'll have these other ones. You have Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde behavior. One moment you're Dr. Jekyll, calm, cool, and collected. The next moment you're trying to choke the life out of them. We call that rapid mood swings. That's because your blood sugar is dropping. If your blood sugar is dropping, what's happening in the brain says, we had a big problem here. We have this much sugar in the bloodstream and it's rapidly disappearing, and I have this much function to accomplish. I have to make neurotransmitters so I can make this person feel calm, cool, and collected and level. Well, I don't have enough sugar to run that because emotions don't come into play as far as things that are essential to life support. Do you know it's really important that your heart beats? Really important. Important that your lungs breathe. Did you know your brain is telling your heart to beat? And your brain is telling your lungs to breathe? For every time your heart goes boom, boom, there was an electrical signal sent from the brain down through many synaptical gaps. I'm not talking about 2, we're talking about thousands of synaptical gaps. Message to the heart, beat once, boom, boom, and it beats. And then the brain has to send another signal through many neurotransmitter, through the synaptical gaps by neurotransmitters to beat, tell the heart to beat again. Every time your heart beats, you had to have a message from the brain down here. Same way with your lungs, same way with your kidneys, same way with your liver. If you can't make the neurotransmitters to conduct the electricity, your heart will not beat. So the brain says, okay, we have to go into triage. Those who are military or any kind of medicine know about triage. You got to treat the most important, critical things first. You got a broken leg, lay there and moan. I don't care about you. Oh, you got your arm severed, you're fine. Just put some type of tourniquet so it doesn't bleed or does. Oh, your guy's got your head blown apart. I think we better treat you fast. So we pick and choose what we treat, and so that's what the brain does. It's like, we don't need emotional control right now. That's not important. Need to make her heart beat, need to make the lungs breathe, need to make the liver and the kidneys function. All the rest of this is superfluous. And so you don't get any neurotransmitters made for your emotional control. So you turn into Mr. Hyde. And everybody around you wants to escape. That's just one of the symptoms of low blood sugar. There's another one too. You have to make this important neurotransmitter called acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is not made in the endocrine system. Acetylcholine is only made at the dendrite in the axon. So it is only made in the central nervous system. We are totally dependent upon blood glucose to fuel that production of acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is what causes you to remember things. So if your blood sugar is running low, you're in the kitchen doing something, and you think, oh, I need to go to the bedroom to get the scissors to open up this package or whatever. And you go to the bedroom, which is 20 paces away, and you arrive in the bedroom and said, oh, what did I come in here for? I don't know, I guess I'll go back to the kitchen. And you say, I think I have early Alzheimer's. No, you don't. You have low blood sugar. And you got it by eating sugar. Do you understand? If you eat sugar, you spike. And if you spike, you have to have the equal and opposite reaction. And then you're just, you're like a yo-yo all over the place. And you don't remember things well. That is all signs of low blood sugar. And there are other peripheral things I already mentioned to you about the vision. But then there's this fatigue, this overwhelming fatigue. You're so heavy. It's not the good fatigue like you've been out in your garden all day and you come in and that's a nice fatigue. You just feel like you're as heavy as a piece of lead. You know, you want to lift your leg out of the car. Let me get out. All right, roll me out. I'll make it. Yeah, you don't. Why? We were forcing all the other cells, your muscle cells, to burn fat. They would prefer to burn sugar. There's nothing left. And so that's all low blood sugar too. And so if we don't eat sugar, you stop this tomfoolery. The average American goes through 8 blood sugar spikes and drops a day. 8. Doesn't have to be that way. You can be leveled all the way across the board. Zoom, level. And then you feel fabulous. So remember, sweet stomp on the gas pedal, 1, by a direct stimulation to those cells at the end of the neural fibers, and 2, by this whole endocrine system loop that I just brought you through. Now, artificial sweeteners. How are we going to take care of artificial sweeteners? I gotta check the time, people. Okay, oh, I'm good, doing well. All right, we got 15 more minutes, but if you have to go to the bathroom, hold it. You gotta stick out here 15 more minutes. If you get up and leave the room, we'll all stare at you. Then you, okay. All right, 15 more minutes and you get a break now. All right, artificial sweeteners work in a very interesting way. They actually work the same way as caffeine, perfumes, and fragrances. Gum is a little bit separate. So I'm going to address all 3 of these. Artificial sweeteners, you know what they are. They're Splenda, they're NutraSweet, they're aspartame, there's xylitol, mannitol, sorbitol, sucralose. I should get a little song. Also includes stevia in there. Stevia is a natural sweetener. All of these things cause you to release adrenaline. They don't have sugar. Those who are diabetics, try an experiment. You get up in the morning, you take your blood glucose with your little glucometer, stab your finger, and then put a little drop. Okay, you guys know how to do this. Now, take your blood sugar and then write it down, your fasting blood sugar, then have artificially sweetened, non-caffeine, so well, you could do the caffeine too because it'll bring it up too, but if you want to be really pure, just do an artificially sweetened Sprite because there's no caffeine there. Take your blood sugar an hour later. It will have gone up. It's like, wait a minute. There's nothing there. There's no sugar. It's got this artificial sweetener, aspartame, in it that has 0 calories. We're not talking calories, people. We're talking endocrine system. We're talking about what does it do to the endocrine system. When you put in anything that is foreign to the human body, you are going to have a response. Artificial sweeteners, caffeine, and perfumes and fragrances work this way because they're foreign protein molecules that don't belong, and as soon as they enter the bloodstream, the brain, which is the hypothalamus, says, we have a problem, foreign invader, entering in through the gastrointestinal tract, red alert. All people, pay attention. And so we have to filter out foreign substances. How do we filter them out? How do we filter things out of the bloodstream? 1, through your liver. 2, through your kidneys. Kidneys handle water, livers handle fat. And we will filter them out. But the problem is, like, your liver only filters 4 quarts of blood a minute, which is absolutely blows my mind away. 4 quarts, that's a gallon of blood a minute flows through your liver. The kidneys is similar. When we put that type of blood through, this is a normal filtering process. But when you have these things, the artificial sweeteners, the caffeine, perfumes, and fragrances, enter in, the hypothalamus, the brain says, move it out faster. Get it out, get it out, get it out, get it out. It's bad, it's bad, it's bad. It's going to cause problems, and it will cause problems. And so we have to increase the filtration rate. How do you increase the filtration rate? How do you make the liver and the kidneys filter faster? You have to raise the blood pressure. Because if you raise the blood pressure, then we send all of this liquid faster through the filters. Remember, these filters, they don't have little hands that say, oh, let me pick this little nasty out, and I'll pick the caffeine molecule out, and I'll pick this little molecule of stevia out. No, they are static. The blood flows through them, and as the blood flows through, the filter catches these things, and then we will excrete them. So if you want to filter faster, then you have to increase the blood pressure. Run it through, okay? Well, how do you increase the blood pressure? Vasoconstriction. Vasoconstriction. Your blood vessels, they're supposed to be open and dilated. Well, if we could just squeeze them up just a little bit, make them more narrow, wouldn't that increase the pressure? Of course you know that. All of you work with garden hoses. You know, if I wanted to water this plant, by the way, I wouldn't because it's fake. But if I wanted to, I could stand, stand over there, and I could hold the garden hose over there, just like this, no attachment on the end, and what would happen to the water? It'd just go glub, glub, glub right at my feet. But I could stand over there, and I could put my thumb over the opening, constrict the opening, and then the water would shoot all the way from over here to there and water the plant. That's exactly what happens. Vasoconstriction. Your vessels, I'm not saying that you have to have high blood pressure, although it does raise your blood pressure some. And then we have the vasoconstriction, and then we push the blood through faster. It works. It works. But then you pay. You pay because to be able to make your vessels constrict, you have to produce a hormone. We're back to hormones, the endocrine system. You have to produce a hormone to be able to do that. And there's only one hormone that will produce that type of vasoconstriction. It is the most powerful vasoconstrictive substance known unto man. Name of hormone is adrenaline. Epinephrine, norepinephrine. Do you see how the pieces are starting to fit together? So when you have the artificial sweeteners, the caffeine, because you know you get a high on artificial sweeteners, drink your Diet Sprite. You feel better. That's because you got an adrenaline rush. Why? So we could have the vasoconstriction, so we get the nasty stuff out of you. And so then you just took a whip, and you took your tired old horses and said, giddy up, and we're not doing it. Okay, I'll beat the tar out of you then. And you hit them. And then they run, boom, and they slow down, and we're back to the cough and sputter, cough and sputter. Okay, now gum. I love to talk about gum. How many are out there chewing gum? Spit it out. No, swallow it. No, don't swallow your gum. Your mother's always told you, don't swallow your gum. It's bad. You know what it'll do to your intestinal tract? It'll come out, don't worry. Gum, constant motion. How do we maintain constant motion? I told you couldn't put one foot in front of the other unless you produce adrenaline. So if you're constantly doing this, you're calling for a constant, a little bit more elevated level of adrenaline. You ever been around these people that, you know, I can't do because I'm standing behind a podium, but you're going to get the picture. You know, leg going up and down. Can you hear my leg? Yeah, yes. Stop it. Especially in church, you know, the whole pew is shaking. Okay. They're doing that because it helps them stay awake. You'll say, yes, it helps me stay awake. Yes, they're producing adrenaline. That's the only thing that can keep you in constant motion. So all these things cause stomping on the gas pedal. Next, we got to install the governor. I already gave it away. You didn't read the slide. You didn't even get to say it. The governor. How are we going to keep you from going so fast, even if you're stepping on the pedal? Efficient protein. Efficient protein. Oh, you have so many messages. I know you hear messages all the time because I have read all this stuff too. I read everything. I read all the stuff from snake oil remedies to the most advanced science that there is. I subscribe to something called Medscape. It tells you about all the studies that are currently being done. I read, and you get so bombarded by all these messages. Protein is bad for you. Eggs raise blood cholesterol. But if you're keeping up with the research, you'll know that they don't raise blood cholesterol. And we are told we eat too much protein in the United States of America. That is a lie. It is a lie. We live on carbohydrates. You get up and have a bowl of cereal. And then you go to lunch and you think you're doing a good thing because you had a homemade peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And then you get to dinner and you have a plate of of spaghetti without meatballs. You don't want to have that nasty meat sauce. You have to have the marinara. And then you have the garlic bread, had a salad, good for you. And then, of course, you've got to have a piece of cheesecake or ice cream after that. We just talk carbohydrate, all the way across the board. Where's the beef? Where's the protein? I'm writing a book. I'm hoping to finish it by the end of the summer called The Cowboy Diet. And you're going to hear me talk a lot about proteins and beans, which we're getting to beans. You know the Bean Queen. I wanted to say that for the last segment. We'll get there. But the protein is so essential. The adrenal glands, the entire endocrine system is dependent upon your consumption of protein. If you do not eat enough protein, when those cells divide, remember the 1/90th that are going to die today? If there is not protein on hand at the minute that they go through cell division, that's how they birth new cells, you will have a sick, weak, lame, and lazy cell. That's what we used to call them in the Army. You're sick, weak, lame, and lazy. Get up. You guys been in the Army, you understand that. Move. Okay, so we got sick, weak, lame, and lazy cells because we don't have enough protein. And the cells that are birthed that day without the protein, sorry, they're going to be there for 3 months. You got him, and you got a bad one. So you got to be eating protein every day. How often? 3 times. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I have listed the proteins here for you. There's only 5, at least that we eat in this country, 5 efficient proteins. And they are eggs, meat, poultry, fish, seafood. People say, well, what about peanuts and cheese and yogurt? They are inefficient. We are not able to utilize, and that's another story. I don't have a lot of time to tell you about it today. Just let me put it to you this way. The body uses proteins in a different way. We have to break them down, and when we break them down, then some are easier to break down than others. The efficient proteins are broken down just like that. We can use them right now. The inefficient proteins, you can work for days to break them down, and it's too late. We need cell division. Right now, we're going through cell division. This moment, not 3 days from now. And so it is better to eat your efficient proteins, and these are the only 5 that we have. Oh, unless you have a client that he's a missionary, and he's in Kenya, and he tells me that they eat termites for lunch. Now, that is an efficient protein if you care to eat termites. He says they're really pretty good. They're crunchy, but the little legs get stuck between his teeth. Sorry. What's that, TMI? Too much information? I love you guys are fun. It's true, he really did say that. Oh, or you could go to Ethiopia. I have a client in Ethiopia, and they have ox blood. Now, okay, some things are not so bad. You may also eat ox blood. That is an efficient protein. Okay, or the ants are starting to come in. Are the ants starting to come in your house? Anyway, you can catch them, and you can eat them, all right? All right, or you can eat these 5. So this is the governor. The governor rebuilds the adrenal glands so they don't get into these flying, galloping rages. And when you stomp on the gas pedal, they're like, no, hold back, baby, hold back. So when you eat a meal without efficient protein, if your meal is just all cereal and there's no eggs there for breakfast, then you're going to have this great big spike in blood sugar. But if you would have put protein in there at the same time, it would have negated some of that effect. You put a governor on the system. So it becomes very important. All right, now then, I've got to give you a few more things here because I got to tell you some directive things. Oh yeah, I want to show you this slide so you'll come back. After the break, I'm going to tell you how to clean your engine. I'll be nice and polite, okay? I won't get grotesque. At least I try not to, okay? It wasn't my fault, Mark Halverson, what that lady said on the radio the other day about the explosive diarrhea. I didn't say it. The lady that called in said it. I was trying, okay. And so we're going to talk about cleaning the engine and setting your timing chain. How do we get things to run smooth without this little things being off?